Hello, everyone. I am Chuang. Let's draw the head of Zuul. The head of Zuul was very complex. When drawing extremely complex-looking animals like this, we must first ensure its general shape is accurate. In the beginning, we can imagine this dinosaur's head into a specific shape, such as a box or a mouse. After determining the shape, we can draw an auxiliary line along the middle of its head, and then arrange the position of its facial features based on it. There were many complicated horns on its head. Their locations also need to be determined based on this auxiliary line. When we draw, we start with a large outline and gradually go into details. Adopting this way, we won't draw messily. Now, let's draw the head of the Zuul. Let's first determine several points on the paper. Draw an arc along the midline of the head, making its head slightly tilted to the left. Then, we draw horizontal lines. The lower row of short lines is the edge of its mouth, and the upper row represents the position of the bone above the eyes. Next, we draw two diagonal lines to show the turning of its head from the top to the side. Now, we can draw the armor plates based on these auxiliary lines. Its eyebrow was a large plate in a position similar to human eyebrows, located above the eyes. A short horn followed behind this eyebrow-like plate. In the front, we draw the beak here. Then, we draw the nostrils that are symmetrical on both sides. Next, we draw its entire mouth. The front beak would end here. Behind this line, it turns backward. There were two large plates at this turn. We can draw the other side symmetrically. Then, we draw one small eye with thicker eyelids around it. Under this eye was the jugal bone, and its tip was also covered with keratin, which was a jugal horn-like structure. Next, we draw the mouth, which curves backward and reaches below the jugal bone. We draw it slightly open. Then, there is the beak at the front of the lower jaw, which is relatively flat. Now, we move to its lower jaw. There were two keratinous structures on its lower jaw. One large and one small. Like this, we've finished the general shape of the head of Zuul. Its neck had two loops of collar-like structures, each with 6 short spikes. Let's show the rows of plates on its head resembling stacked bricks. These plates grew randomly. You can draw them more easily. Just draw them irregularly, arranged row by row. The plates in this part above its nose might be arranged in prominent rows, and those might be more random when reaching the top of the head. There were 2 short spikes atop the back of the head. We can draw a loop of small spikes around the base of these 2 spikes. Then, we draw textures like this on its beak, and make the edge of the beak into a wavy structure, similar to the jagged beaks of some hadrosaurs. Then, we draw its gums, followed by its tiny teeth. Here, we can draw its somewhat broad tongue. Although there is not much research on the tongue of Zuul, its tongue should be very similar to that of Pinacosaurus, which is flat. Now, we draw the line between the lips and gums. Then, draw the highlight and pupil in the eye, making the upper part of the eye slightly darker. Blacken the nostrils and draw some wrinkles around them. Then, we add some scratches or other textures that can express shadows on the large plates at the turning parts. We imagine the sun is shining from above, and shadows will appear on this side of the armor plates. We use these textures to show the shadows. The texture in the lower part can be drawn heavier. We use lighter lines to show the texture in the upper part but draw fewer strokes. Above the jugal horn and the keratinous structure on the lower jaw, we can also use such lines to show their texture. Then, we add some details. Draw some large scales along the periphery of the lips, and some smaller ones on the sides. We can replace most of the scales on its face with rows of tiny dots. But in critical parts, such as the periphery of the armor plates, we need to be more careful and draw a circle of scales. Then, draw the shadow here at the corner of the mouth. We try to use fold-like lines to show it. Above the jugal horn, we can draw a few rows of larger scales. And those on the other parts can transition into folds like this. Then, draw an ear hole. Next, draw a row of large scales along the upper lip, and fill these parts with scales, giving the impression that the scales on the face are relatively small and gradually become larger on the top of the head. There was a large armor plate here on the eye, and the upper eyelid had a tough structure. Then, let's add some shading on the throat and briefly outline its body. Good. In this way, we've finished drawing the head of Zuul.